A wealthy man asked his daughter to select a new mother from a group of 5 affluent women. However, upon discovering the truth about who truly cared for the child, he chose the black cleaning lady. "This individual shouldn't even be in the same vicinity as us," Victoria Ashworth remarked to the other hopefuls as she observed Kesha Williams quietly clearing up shattered crystal from the Blackwood Mansion's marble floor. The glassware had been inadvertently knocked over during lunch by the 5 socialites vying to become the new wife of the millionaire widower David Blackwood. Kesha, who was 28 years old, had been employed at the imposing Atlanta residence for a mere 3 months. Nevertheless, she had already profoundly impacted the life of 7-year-old Emma, who had lost her mother the previous year in a traffic accident. The candidates remained unaware that every cutting remark, every disdainful glance, and every attempt at humiliation was being meticulously noted by someone who held secrets far more profound than they could comprehend. "Daddy, why are those ladies being so unkind to Kesha?" Emma inquired that morning. Concealed behind David's office door, his daughter's innocent question resonated in the businessman's mind as he watched through the security cameras. He saw Kesha being subjected to humiliation by the 5 candidates who had arrived 2 weeks prior to participate in his matrimonial competition. The concept had originated from his therapist. Allow Emma to reside with different women for a period of 1 month, and then let her choose who she would prefer as her new mother. David had carefully selected 5 women from high society: a legal professional, a medical practitioner, an entrepreneur, a socialite, and an architect. All were Caucasian, all were wealthy, and all appeared impeccable on paper. However, from the very first day, something unsettling began to transpire. The 5 women, spearheaded by the disdainful Victoria Ashworth, whose family possessed an oil fortune, had initiated a silent conflict against Kesha. This was not because she posed a threat. After all, she was merely the cleaning staff. Rather, it was because Emma demonstrably preferred spending time with her than with any of the candidates. "That child must learn about social stratification at an early age," declared Priscilla Montgomery, the lawyer, during a dinner gathering they believed they were attending privately. "It is crucial for her to grasp who the suitable individuals are for her societal standing." What they failed to realize was that David had installed microphones throughout the residence after observing disconcerting shifts in Emma's demeanor. The girl, who was finally beginning to smile again, had reverted to experiencing nightmares and bouts of anxiety. Kesha, who held a degree in education but worked as a cleaner to support her ailing mother, could never have anticipated that her inherent warmth towards Emma would provoke such vindictiveness. Every morning, while preparing breakfast, she overheard disparaging remarks about individuals who did not know their proper station and inappropriate influences for children from reputable families. Yet, there was an underlying element that none of the 5 candidates perceived. In Kesha's eyes, a quiet resolve shone, forged by years of confronting prejudices far more severe than these. And when she lowered her head in response to insults, it was not an act of submission. It was a calculated strategy from someone who understood that the most satisfying retribution often comes to those who possess the patience to await the opportune moment. If you are enjoying this narrative about how prejudice can rebound upon those who harbor it, kindly remember to subscribe to the channel, as these women were unaware that their days of belittling Kesha were numbered, and their ultimate downfall would be far more striking than they could have ever envisioned. The subsequent morning, Victoria convened the other 4 candidates in the mansion's private library, away from any potential observers. The scheme being devised was as cruel as it was precisely calculated. "We must approach this situation strategically," Victoria stated, adjusting her diamond earrings as she watched Kesha through the window, engaged in a game of hopscotch with Emma in the garden. "That woman is influencing the child in a manner unsuitable for our social standing." Priscilla Montgomery, the corporate lawyer, opened her address book crafted from Italian leather. "I have reviewed the legal protocols. David can dismiss any employee due to cultural incompatibility without facing labor disputes." "Cultural incompatibility is merely an elaborate euphemism," chuckled Christina Hawthorne, the dermatologist who exclusively served Atlanta's elite. "The issue is far more apparent than that." Rebecca Sterling, the architect responsible for designing residences for 3 governors, shook her head in disdain. "Emma must learn about appropriate associations from an early age. This proximity to the household staff is fostering unrealistic expectations regarding social relationships. Amanda Chase, the heiress to a chain of luxury hotels, was more direct. Let us cease beating around the bush. The problem is that a black cleaning lady is occupying emotional space that rightfully belongs to us. Emma ought to be attached to one of us, not her. What none of them grasped was that Kesha had grown up overhearing conversations precisely like these. As the daughter of a housekeeper who had served affluent families for 30 years, she was privy to every coded phrase, every veiled insinuation, and every tactic employed by privileged individuals to rationalize their cruelty. At the age of 14, Kesha had witnessed her mother's dismissal after 20 years of exemplary service, solely because her employer's son had become overly familiar with her. The subtle accusation of her mother not knowing her place had reverberated through the corridors of that Charleston mansion. And now, 14 years later, the same venomous whispers were resurfacing in Atlanta. However, there was an aspect these women failed to perceive behind Kesha's outward meekness. Her education at Clark Atlanta University had represented more than just an academic credential. It had been a silent proclamation of defiance against the very system that had attempted to break her family. Throughout the 3 years she had worked in public schools before being compelled to accept domestic employment to cover her mother's cancer treatment expenses, Kesha had honed the ability to assess individuals with surgical precision. She knew precisely when she was being underestimated and, more importantly, how to leverage that underestimation to her advantage. "Emma, my dear," Victoria said that afternoon, intercepting the child as she hurried to find Kesha in the kitchen. "How about we engage in something a bit more sophisticated? I brought a chess set back from France specifically for you." "I don't know how to play chess," Emma replied, attempting to proceed on her way. "That is precisely why you need to learn," insisted Priscilla, gently blocking the hallway. "Intellectual games are vital for the development of refined minds." "Keisha taught me how to play checkers yesterday," Emma offered, oblivious to the palpable tension her words generated. "She said that games help you think more effectively, regardless of what they are." Christina exchanged a knowing glance with the others. "My dear, there exists a distinction between various forms of games. Some are more suitable for particular individuals." It was at that precise moment that Kesha appeared at the kitchen doorway, carrying a tray laden with still-warm cookies. She had overheard every word, yet her countenance remained composed, almost maternal. "Pardon the interruption," she stated, with a politeness that verged on perfection. "Emma, your chocolate chip cookies are ready." The girl's eyes immediately brightened. "Kesha, did you make the butterfly-shaped cookies like you promised?" "Indeed, my dear, and I saved some extra for after dinner," Kesha replied. Victoria observed the exchange with mounting irritation. The natural affection between them was undeniable, and it amplified the urgency of her objective. "Keisha," Victoria ventured, testing out the cleaner's name for the first time, yet articulating it as if it were an unpleasant foreign term. "Do you not believe you are assuming too much responsibility with Emma? We are here to address those developmental needs." Keisha offered a polite smile, but a flicker of something animated her dark eyes. "Certainly, Miss Victoria. I was merely adhering to Mr. David's directives regarding keeping Emma nourished and content." "Naturally," Amanda interjected, joining the conversation. "However, nourishing is distinct from forging emotional connections. It would be most advisable to maintain an appropriate professional distance." "I comprehend perfectly," Keisha responded, her voice retaining the same subtly threatening sweetness. "I have always been instructed that caring for children involves providing them with precisely what they require when they require it." The response was excessively courteous, excessively diplomatic, and it unsettled the 5 women. There was an element of Keisha's composure that suggested an intellect far sharper than they had initially assumed. That evening, David discreetly monitored the candidates through the cameras as they planned their next course of action. They had resolved to document Keisha's every perceived transgression, compiling a dossier of inappropriate conduct to present to him. What David was discovering, however, was markedly different from what they believed they were documenting. Each video segment depicted Kesha acting professionally, with evident care, and displaying genuine attentiveness to Emma's needs. Conversely, it showcased 5 adult women who were visibly uncomfortable with the natural affection evident between a child and her caregiver. Yet, Something more disturbing began to emerge from these recordings. David started to discern a discernible pattern in the candidate's behavior. Subtle acts of sabotage, deliberately crafted comments intended to erode Emma's trust in Keisha, and understated attempts to engineer scenarios where she would appear incompetent. "Daddy," Emma remarked that night during dinner, "why don't the ladies like Keisha?" The question landed on the table like an unspoken bombshell. The 5 candidates froze, their forks suspended midair. "What sort of question is that, my dear?" Victoria inquired, feigning a maternal smile. "We are fond of all the staff." "That is not accurate," Emma retorted with the unvarnished honesty characteristic of children. "I overheard you saying she did not know her proper place." David felt his blood drain from his veins. "Emma, where did you hear such a thing?" "In the library this morning. They were discussing getting Kesha dismissed." The ensuing silence was profound. 5 intelligent, articulate women found themselves rendered utterly speechless, as a 7-year-old child had exposed their conspiracy with the precision of a seasoned prosecutor. "Emma, you must have misunderstood," Priscilla stated hastily. "Adult conversations sometimes sound different to young ears." However, David observed the expressions around the table, and every face confirmed that Emma had grasped the situation perfectly. Moreover, he was beginning to realize that his daughter was not the sole individual who had been underestimated in this household. Each subsequent indignity, every endeavor to belittle Kesha, only served to fortify an internal resilience that her tormentors could not perceive, a silent strength nurtured by the very injustices they sought to impose, built upon years of opposition that had commenced long before she set foot in that mansion, and which now grew with the certainty of someone who knows that the most potent revenge is to allow one's enemies to self-destruct through their own conceit. On Wednesday morning, Kesha awoke 2 hours earlier than her usual time and contacted her elder sister, Diane, who resided in Washington, D.C. The conversation was conducted in hushed tones within the modest room she occupied in the mansion's annex. "Diane, I require your assistance with something," Keisha said, gazing out the window at the still darkened lights of the main house. "Do you recall those contacts you cultivated during your tenure at the Department of Education?" Diane Williams Johnson, a graduate of Howard University with a degree in investigative journalism and presently a producer at CNN, immediately perceived the underlying tension in her sister's voice. "Kesha, what is happening? You never contact me at this hour. I am being targeted by 5 affluent women who wish to have me removed from here, and I require some form of ammunition to defend myself." For the subsequent 20 minutes, Kesha meticulously detailed every instance of humiliation, every racially charged comment masked as social concern, and every attempted act of sabotage. Diane listened intently and silently, her journalistic acumen instantly recognizing the patterns of systemic discrimination she had investigated for years. "Kesha, are you entirely certain you wish to initiate a conflict? These women possess considerable resources and influential connections. Diane, our mother dedicated 30 years to enduring humiliation from individuals such as these. I will not perpetuate her history. Not when I have Emma to protect." The mention of Emma caused Diane to comprehend the gravity of the situation. She was aware that her sister had developed a genuine maternal bond with the child, an attachment that had blossomed organically after years of working with traumatized children in public school settings. "Very well. Provide me with their full names and allow me 48 hours. I shall ascertain all the information you require." Meanwhile, David intensified his own discreet inquiry. He had surreptitiously engaged the services of a private investigator, Marcus Thompson, who specialized in conducting background checks on members of the social elite. What he was uncovering about his 5 candidates was deeply unsettling. Victoria Ashworth had been expelled from 2 charitable organizations due to financial improprieties that had been discreetly concealed by her family's wealth. Priscilla Montgomery had a history of labor lawsuits filed by employees who alleged harassment and racial discrimination. Christina Hawthorne had forfeited her medical license in 2 states before establishing her practice in Georgia. Rebecca Sterling had been the subject of an Internal Revenue Service investigation for tax evasion, and Amanda Chase was being sued by 3 former employees of her hotel chain for fostering a hostile work environment predicated on racial discrimination. Mr. Blackwood, Marcus stated during an encrypted telephone conversation, these individuals are not merely prejudiced, they are systematic predators who exploit their social standing to ruin vulnerable individuals. Concurrently, at the mansion, the 5 candidates escalated their attacks on Keisha. Victoria had concocted a meticulously planned strategy to fabricate situations that would portray Keisha as either incompetent or unsuitable for her role. We must document her every mistake, every instance where she crosses professional boundaries, Victoria instructed during a morning briefing in Priscilla's bedroom. David is a man of logic. With sufficient evidence, he will be compelled to dismiss her. Priscilla opened her laptop and displayed a document she had meticulously prepared. I have compiled a comprehensive behavioral report. It includes allegations of breaches of family privacy, undue influence over Emma, and attempts to emotionally manipulate her employer. All falsehoods, but presented with considerable substantiation, added Christina, admiring the document's legal acumen. Leveraging my medical background, I can incorporate concerns regarding the child's psychological well-being. Rebecca and Amanda exchanged smiles of satisfaction. They were convinced they had orchestrated Kesha's perfect downfall, a meticulously planned, systematic process that would be impossible for a mere cleaning lady, devoid of resources or formal education, to contest. What they failed to grasp was that Keisha had anticipated this very strategy precisely. During her years of employment in public schools, she had encountered numerous principals and coordinators who employed identical tactics to sideline black educators who did not conform to the institutional culture. That afternoon, while discreetly cleaning David's office, Keisha inadvertently discovered the candidate's report left open on the printer. She swiftly perused each accusation, each malicious misrepresentation of her interactions with Emma, each attempt to reframe her genuine affection as something inappropriate or suspect. Instead of succumbing to panic or despair, Keisha felt a cold sense of calm permeate her being. It was the same composure she had cultivated at the age of 14 when she witnessed her mother's dismissal for demonstrating excessive emotional closeness with the children under her care. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Kesha initiated another critical telephone call. This time, she contacted her former supervisor at Clark Atlanta University, Professor Angela Morrison, a preeminent authority on child development and the trauma of separation. Professor Morrison, I require your professional assistance in documenting the emotional well-being of a child embroiled in a highly sensitive situation. Dr. Morrison, who had provided guidance to Kesha on her dissertation concerning reparative bonds in orphaned children, immediately grasped the significance of the request. Kesha, are you requesting that I conduct an independent psychological evaluation? Precisely. And it is imperative that it be executed in a manner that will be irrefutable in any judicial or legal proceeding. During the subsequent 40-minute conversation, Kesha outlined not only a defensive strategy, but also an offensive maneuver that would capitalize on the very academic and professional expertise her adversaries presumed she lacked. The following day, David observed through the cameras as the candidates executed their most egregious act of sabotage to date. They had deliberately concealed Emma's cherished teddy bear, a memento from her late mother, and subsequently discovered the toy in Kesha's closet. Emma, my dear, we have found your teddy bear, Victoria announced dramatically, retrieving the toy from the closet as Emma wept inconsolably. It was located in the staff quarters. The girl looked at Kesha with a mixture of confusion and hurt. Keisha, why did you take my teddy bear? I did not take it, my dear, Keisha responded calmly. However, David could discern the pain evident in her eyes through the camera feed. Someone must have placed it there inadvertently. Inadvertently? Priscilla inquired, feigning incredulity. Emma, did you perhaps leave your teddy bear in the staff quarters? No, Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. I always leave him on my bed. Christina approached and knelt to the child's level. My dear, at times people, different people, take possessions that do not belong to them. It is not necessarily out of malice, but rather from envy or a desire to possess desirable items. It was at that precise moment that David witnessed something extraordinary unfold. Rather than desperately professing her innocence or vehemently defending herself, Keisha simply embraced Emma and murmured, My little one, in your heart, that I would never take anything of yours, and those who genuinely love you would never attempt to confuse that heart. The mature wisdom and unwavering dignity conveyed in that response stood in stark contrast to the calculated cruelty exhibited by the 5 women. David realized he was not merely witnessing racial discrimination, but a systematic attempt to psychologically dismantle both his employee and his own daughter. That night, while the candidates covertly celebrated what they perceived as their ultimate triumph, Kesha received a telephone call from Diane that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of events. "Sister, you will scarcely believe what I have unearthed about your acquaintances. And most remarkably, it is all publicly documented. They are considerably more vulnerable than they realize." Across the expanse of the mansion, David arrived at a decision that would seal the fate of the 5 women. He had observed sufficient evidence, gathered ample documentation, and reached a conclusion that left him both incensed and resolute. The time had come to cease his passive observation and initiate decisive action. However, prior to that, he needed to engage in a critical conversation with a woman he had profoundly underestimated, and who was on the verge of discovering that she possessed allies and resources far more formidable than any of her adversaries could have conceived. Each successive act of cruelty had not only fortified Keisha's resolve, but had also revealed a character that transformed each assault into a catalyst for a response that would be as astute as it was devastating, demonstrating that occasionally the individual who appears most vulnerable is precisely the one who wields the most lethal weaponry in a conflict that her adversaries had already lost without even realizing it. The following Friday, David convened a special assembly. He had discreetly extended invitations to Dr. Angela Morrison, Diane Williams-Johnson of CNN, and investigator Marcus Thompson. The 5 candidates arrived, anticipating that they would finally receive a decision regarding their selection. "Ladies, before I announce my decision, I would like to share some rather illuminating findings," David stated, activating the screen in the room. Victoria offered a confident smile. "Certainly, David. We are eager to hear them." The initial image displayed was a news article with the headline, "Heiress Diverts Charity Funds." Victoria's photograph was prominently featured. "That is a fabrication," Victoria exclaimed, her face flushing crimson. "Is it?" Diane inquired, rising to her feet. "I am Diane Williams-Johnson, representing CNN. I can attest to the veracity of every word in this report." David clicked to the subsequent slide. Priscilla Montgomery found herself embroiled in a lawsuit alleging racial discrimination against 3 African-American staff members. "David, this is completely out of context," Priscilla attempted nervously. "Context is precisely what's needed," interrupted Marcus Thompson. "As a private investigator, I can confirm all these documents are publicly accessible and have been thoroughly verified." The subsequent images presented were utterly devastating to Christina, Rebecca, and Amanda, presented one after another. Lawsuits pertaining to medical malpractice, accusations of tax evasion, and claims of maintaining a hostile work environment were displayed. "You are all fundamentally predatory," David declared with chilling coldness, "and I have meticulously documented every single instance of your targeted attacks against Keisha." He then proceeded to play the recorded audio evidence. The voices of the 5 women permeated the room with their statements, including racist remarks, explicit plans for sabotage, and details of the fabricated situation involving Emma's teddy bear. "This constitutes an invasion of privacy," Victoria exclaimed indignantly, emphasizing, "in my very own home." David let out a bitter laugh. "The very home where you plotted to utterly destroy an innocent individual?" Dr. Morrison then stepped forward. "As a specialist in child development, I conducted an evaluation of Emma this past week. The child exhibits robust and healthy recuperative attachments with Kesha, which are absolutely vital for her post-traumatic recovery." Emma, who had been summoned into the room, immediately ran to Kesha. "Kesha, you're not going to leave, are you?" she pleaded. "No, sweetheart," Keisha responded calmly, embracing the child. David's gaze met the eyes of the 5 women directly. Keisha Williams possesses a degree in education from Clark Atlanta University, holds 3 specializations in child development, and has impeccable professional references. Your assumption that she was merely a cleaning lady stems solely from her race. Victoria attempted one last desperate argument. David, you are making an egregious error. Please consider Emma's social standing and her future. I am considering it, David interjected. Kesha, will you do me the honor of marrying me? An almost tangible silence descended upon the room. Kesha looked at Emma, then at David. Yes, I will, she confirmed. Emma erupted in a scream of pure joy. Now, Kesha will be my real mom. The 5 women present were utterly stunned. Victoria's face turned ashen. Impossible, Christina whispered. You're going to marry the maid. I am marrying the most honorable woman I have ever known, David stated firmly. The woman who cared for my daughter with genuine affection while you schemed to destroy her out of sheer prejudice. Diane, who had been discreetly filming the entire exchange, announced, "This expose will be broadcasted this coming Monday. Racist socialites exposed, the downfall of 5 elite predators. Their reputations, careers, and social connections are utterly ruined," Marcus added, all documented and beyond refutation. Victoria attempted to depart, but David intercepted her. Oh, and just one final matter. I am initiating lawsuits against all of you for conspiracy, defamation, and attempted character assassination. My legal team is already fully engaged. The 5 women departed the opulent mansion in utter humiliation, their exit captured by the journalists Diane had summoned. Their mobile phones were already buzzing with furious calls from clients, acquaintances, and family members who had witnessed the initial news reports circulating on social media. Kesha remained standing, exuding dignity and a profound sense of peace, holding Emma in her arms. "Thank you for believing in me," she said to David. "And thank you for showing me what truly holds value," he replied, bestowing a tender kiss upon her. While the former contestants grappled with the complete disintegration of their privileged existences, a new family was being forged. This family was built upon the foundation of genuine love, mutual respect, and the ultimate triumph of personal integrity over pervasive prejudice, demonstrating that often the most potent form of retribution is simply to thrive, while those who sought to dismantle you witness their own carefully constructed facades publicly crumble, revealing their true natures to the entire world, hidden for so long behind a veneer of false sophistication. 2 years later, Diane's groundbreaking article had evolved into a crucial case study on the pervasive issue of racial discrimination, extensively utilized in journalism programs across the nation. The 5 women faced profound and irreversible consequences. Victoria Ashworth was disinherited by her family when the Board of Trustees uncovered her fraudulent embezzlement from charitable funds. Currently, she is employed as a sales associate in a retail establishment, frequently recognized by customers who had viewed the widely publicized story. Priscilla Montgomery was dismissed from her prestigious law firm and subsequently had her professional license suspended. Rebecca Sterling declared bankruptcy after losing all of her architectural commissions. Christina Hawthorne relocated to a different state following the closure of her medical clinic. Amanda Chase was compelled to liquidate her hotel properties to satisfy outstanding workers' compensation claims. Meanwhile, Kesha experienced an extraordinary period of prosperity. David had strongly encouraged her to complete her master's degree in special education, and she now presides over a foundation dedicated to providing scholarships for underprivileged children pursuing studies in music and the arts. "Mom Kesha, look at what I've learned on the piano today," Emma exclaimed, running home from her lessons. At the age of 9, she had achieved mastery of 3 musical instruments and possessed fluent command of the Portuguese language, a result of regular lessons with Kesha's grandmother, who had moved into their mansion. The family unit had expanded. 6-month-old David Jr. slept peacefully in Kesha's embrace as she meticulously organized documentation for the foundation named in Emma's honor. "Darling, another thank you letter," David said, handing her an envelope. "This one is from a mother in Detroit whose son received a full scholarship to study the violin." Kesha smiled, recalling a recent conversation with Emma. The preceding week, the child had inquired about the motivations behind the unkind women's attempts to separate her from Kesha. "Sweetheart, some individuals are born with an abundance of advantages, and they erroneously believe this elevates them above others. But do you know the secret?" Kesha had responded. "People like that invariably bring about their own downfall because genuine kindness and ingrained cruelty cannot coexist within the same heart. During a televised interview on the nation's most popular morning program, David was questioned about his much-discussed decision to marry Keisha. "Controversial?" he scoffed. "I married a woman who is exceptionally educated, possesses immense intelligence, rescued my daughter from a profound state of despair, and imparted to me the true essence of family. If that's considered controversial, then the fundamental issue resides not with me," the host pressed further. "But what about the social disparities between you?" "What disparities?" David replied, fixing his gaze directly at the camera. "My wife holds a master's degree, manages a foundation that has positively impacted 1,000 children, is proficient in 3 languages, and is raising my children with a depth of love and wisdom that no socialite could ever hope to emulate." Keisha watched from their home, with Emma comfortably settled on her lap, beaming with pride at the man who had chosen to love her unconditionally, exactly as she was. At Emma's school, other children frequently inquired about her esteemed mother. "She's the bravest woman in the entire world," Emma would proudly declare, "and she also makes the most delicious chocolate cake." Kesha's ultimate triumph wasn't in retaliating against her tormentors. It was in cultivating a life so rich and fulfilling that her own happiness became irrefutable evidence that individuals like Victoria were fundamentally misguided regarding inherent human worth. That particular Sunday morning, as she observed David playfully interacting with their children in the very garden where she had once endured such profound humiliation, Kesha reflected on the transformative trajectory of her life. It wasn't merely that she had achieved success, it was that she had elevated her victory into something far more significant than her own personal gain. "Love, come here," David called from the garden. "Emma wants to show you the song she composed for you." Keisha walked towards the family she had painstakingly built, acutely aware that sometimes the most profound retribution against ingrained prejudice isn't to respond with hostility, but rather to counter with such overwhelming love and accomplishment that the very rules of engagement are entirely rewritten. If you believe that inherent dignity and genuine love invariably prevail over prejudice and malice, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more narratives that underscore the ultimate truth, that those who love authentically always discover their rightful place in the world, and that place is invariably vaster and more radiant than their adversaries could ever possibly conceive.